It's great to be here. Thank you.
Now, you call yourself a peace worker, and we know that leader after leader from country after country have all taken a stab at trying to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, tried to put together some kind of peace plan. Why, to your mind, do these peace talks continue to fail?
Well, I think there's many, many reasons. One is they're really going over the top, and on the ground, people don't understand peace. They're not ready for it. They actually don't want to give that much for it. There's a kind of a big gulf between peace talks that have to be done in order for peace to be seen to somehow to be happening, and the actual will of the people on the ground to make peace. If there was enough will on the ground, peace would happen tomorrow. I mean, just Israelis and Palestinians are living side by side. You hardly know when you've moved from Israel to the Palestinian territories, you'll think you're in the same place. Mm-hmm. They eat the same food, their languages are not so different, they're Semitic peoples, and there's no reason why you can't just live together. It's the will and the sense that we can do it, which is missing on the ground.
So why is there no will? Why is that missing?
I think it's because of the build-up of narratives, and this is very much where our work is involved. People build narratives and story. The story then becomes something that they live by. They pass to the children and the next generation, Mm-hmm. So there's stories. The stories involve very heavy labeling. The Israelis, according to the Palestinians, are the occupiers, the enemies, the dominant, the colonialists, etc. The Palestinians to the Israelis are labeled unreliable, dangerous, terrorists, violent, etc., etc. These labels become so strong that people can't get out from underneath them. And I think the way to peace is to actually challenge the labels, to ask what the truth of things is, and I don't see that happening that much.
So what are you doing to help people get out from underneath them, as you put it? How is the work that you're doing different? Because I suppose as humans, that's what we do. We do build a narrative about ourselves, about our past, about our future. How is the work that you're doing kind of transforming the way we talk to each other?
It's a great question. I have to say that the amount of eye-to-eye contact and sitting together in a warm, connected way between Israelis and Palestinians is minimal. And the peace activities on the grass levels now, they're beautiful in some cases, like Rabbis for Human Rights, an extraordinary organization, but it's minimal in terms of the situation right now. It doesn't really make a dent in the national narratives of the majority of people. So what we've been doing is using tools derived basically from mindfulness, which itself has come from the Buddhist-inspired teachings, to actually break down these barriers and look at them. Because the first thing mindfulness can show you is, wait a minute, I have built a narrative about the other. Is it true? Mm-hmm. And if you meet the other, say a Palestinian that you think, Palestinian terrorist, but you meet him and he's a father and he's got kids and he's gone to the university and he's teaching in a school, and you see his struggles of life. And the Israelis on the other side, the Palestinians meet an Israeli, he's a soldier. No, he's a family man, he's got kids in school. As soon as you get to that level, and that needs the mindfulness to expose the blocks.
So why aren't we relating to each other on that human level, at least in the halls of Parliament, where our leaders are representing us as the people, having these kinds of conversations, and you say there needs to be a will? If you say people from human to human can relate to each other on that level, why aren't we seeing those kinds of conversations in a warmth over a cup of coffee, looking at each other from leader to leader saying, you know, these are all my children that I represent in my country? Why are we not seeing those kind of conversations happening? What's happening, or what's stopping that dialogue?
Well, I think at the level of the leaders, by the way, Palestinians and Israelis blame the leaders. And I don't think they should do. I think they should look at themselves. I think that in the street we need to look at, say, what stories are we building up about the other? Well, the leaders are just representing the common narratives. They're not breaking any narratives. You need a different leader to break the narratives. Look at Nelson Mandela. If you say, do we have a Nelson Mandela or a Mahatma Gandhi in Israel? No, because they're kind of leaders that can actually break the narrative.
So why aren't we breaking the narrative? Why don't people want to?
Because the leaders are, first of all, there's a political issue. The leaders, on the contrary, are actually increasing fear and anxiety when they could be undoing it. And I don't see much investment in the leadership on both sides intentionally reducing fear and anxiety, because most of the problem with the conflict is fear and anxiety is not actually that anyone's going to take and throw us into the sea as Jews. It's not realistic. The fear and anxiety is realistic. Mindfulness will allow you to see the build-up of fear and anxiety and know that and take responsibility for it. It's just anxiety about the other. Is it real? No. I can tell you that when loads and loads of times that we've sat with Palestinians in Nablus and also in Jerusalem, and we've talked together, and the fear and anxiety goes in one day. It can just begin to dissolve and dissolve and dissolve, and suddenly people realize, where I've been holding this thing, and it's so much pain to hold the fear and anxiety all your life about the other. It's so much pain and difficulty, and so it's such a relief to say, wait a minute, do I really need to put these people there as for 100 years as the enemy, and hold them there and fix them there as the enemy? And you realize, whoa, I actually don't need to do that.
So how is your work helping Israelis and Palestinians, if we're talking about it in this frame, come closer towards each other and to foster love, as opposed to this fear and anxiety, which you say is creating the conflict?
So what we used to do is we used to bring groups of Israelis to be with Palestinians in Shechem, Nablus, for 48 hours. And it was called the Transformation of Suffering Workshops. And we had some funding from the People to People Oslo Fund, or Oslo Foundation. And what we did is actually, first of all, have one day for people to feel safe with each other. So we're just chatting, having tea, Israelis, Palestinians, talking about their life a little bit. And then on the second day, we asked people to sit face to face for 1 hour and really tell each other about the pain or the difficulty that they're experiencing in their life right now. What is it really in my family that I experience? And this sense of sharing experiences opens the heart to two people, and their images of each other are gone. They're like intimacy takes the place of the labeling and the narratives. And after that, you cannot anymore see this person as, whether he's an Israeli soldier even, or a Palestinian, you cannot see this person as the enemy. They are a human being like yourself. So this is the movement that we were doing, and we were bringing for many years, bringing groups every month to do this work. This is a grassroots slog. It's a slog.
And
it's
no
not
doubt
easy.
You had to find willing participants, of course, to be a part of that. But then I understand that all changed when the Second Intifada came about.
Yeah, so indeed we had to find people that were ready, and everyone was afraid, by the way, whether they were peace-oriented or not peace-oriented, to leave the safety of Israel and suddenly to go into the Palestinian territories. People felt afraid. But we worked with that. We worked mindfully with the sense of fear and giving confidence and encouragement that you have to take a little risk for peace. It's not going to happen just by itself. So we're encouraging that. I would say the people that are really right-wing wouldn't come to our workshops, but many middle-of-the-road people did come because they said they also agreed, we need to do something. This situation is intolerable generation after generation. And that was the motive that sent them off to Nablus. And in the end, in the Second Intifada, the Palestinians, that's the Palestinian Authority, said to us, well, look, you haven't made a difference on the ground. We still have the settlements kind of on our back. All your workshops haven't taken away one settlement. And we answered to the Palestinian Authority, that's not our purpose. We are educating people to be peacemakers. We're educating a Palestinian teacher to know what to say to his students in his class, to say, Israelis are not monsters. They're like human beings like you and me. But we've got a situation which is impossible, but the people can be as good as you and me. So this is education. This is not political action. And they didn't understand that so well.
So when you see in the current context now, weekly protests by Palestinians on the Gaza border with Israel, constant car ramming, stabbing attacks in Jerusalem, terror attacks from both sides in the West Bank, what do you make of that then?
Well, this is going to continue because it's an intolerable and impossible situation. When there is so much fear and anger, people won't care to die. They know they're going to get caught. Maybe they'll be shot if they attack in Jerusalem. They don't care because there's no hope. It's like we have to work with hope. We have to work with children. We have to work with education, Israelis and Palestinians, and then have patience. And gradually the level of violence will go down. It will not go down in 5 minutes. And unfortunately, what happens is, whenever there's violence, it sort of takes over the mental structure of everybody, and then they confirm, oh, well, they're just violent people. They're not violent people. There's somebody that can't cope anymore. His maybe sister or his brother was killed, or someone has suffered real harm and hurt and pain, and he goes out in an act of violence. This is the extreme, and it will keep happening. But it doesn't mean that the whole people are like that. It doesn't mean on both sides that there's not a great movement or longing in the heart for peace, that we have to address that longing.
When you talk about something that we can do, I see you've brought your book with you that you've just released, What's Beyond Mindfulness. How do the lessons then of mindfulness help us, help the we that you're talking about, to lift people towards hope, towards the place that you're hoping Israelis and Palestinians can move towards?
Mindfulness is about being able to take responsibility for what's going on in your mind. It's about an ability to see yourself and also to see the other. If you can be mindful, you're not blocked by a kind of a filter and a label of the other, but you can in a way look behind the eyes of the other, then you're making peace. So mindfulness gives you power of mind, if you like. And you have time for a small story. One of our peace walks we did in Israel, we did peace walks in Israel and Palestine. And on one of them, we had a meeting beforehand with the rabbi of Akko and Bedouin Sheikh Mukhtar. And the rabbi of Akko said to the Bedouin, how do you make peace? Tell us, why you do these peace walks? And the Bedouin said, well, when I'm walking and someone shouts at me, I absorb the violence. It doesn't do anything to me. I'm like a sponge. I just take it in and I keep walking and I smile. And at that moment, peace is made.